Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Generalist, where security practitioners come to look beyond niches, silos, egos, and hopefully build their competence and credibility. Well, Happy New Year, and it's my great privilege to have my friend and peer in the asset protection industry, Sean Ahrens, joining me. And such a great occasion to start the year on the right note, if you will. Who else could I have chosen to join me for this? I don't see a better practitioner in our industry to share with us his thoughts about how 2021 went and what we're going to see, hopefully positive developments or some concerns we might have about this year, and also we'll offer a message to young and aspiring practitioners in the industry. So without further ado, Sean, my heartfelt welcome. Thank you so very much for being with me, for joining me for this, and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Glad to be here.
Thank you. Thank you. Look, it's for me always very educational when I listen to your perspective. Perspective taking is one of the things that I very much try to educate myself about. I don't claim, nor will I ever claim to know everything about our industry. So when I in previous conversations, when I listened to you, I learned a lot of things to adjust my perspective about where our industry is going, what's happening, how to view it. And so last time I remember we talked about some challenges. I think we talked about defunding the police, the political issues in the states, and how that was a silly idea in terms of crime prevention or crime management and keeping order and helping maintain a normal society. So I want to ask you and start off this conversation by maybe first sharing what are some of your highlights from 2021? And I'll add a few of my own.
2021 was a train wreck. I mean, we as practitioners have always talked about being proactive and prepared, and you and I have written articles and discussed this, and apparently no one reads them. Essentially, the challenge here is that, many of the things are just around common sense, right? So decriminalization, defunding of the police, what does that mean? That means that we're going to see more crime. And back then, no, this is what we need to do. We need to put more money into counselors, and we need to, refocus our efforts and what have you, and just a complete shy away from community policing, which absolutely has been effective. And as such, my business is booming. I mean, it's unbelievable the number of assessments that we're doing, predominantly because the police services that used to do those assessments don't do them anymore. It's increasingly becoming difficult for me to get crime data. They actually block it from me. They'll deny my FOIA requests. I just had a project in New York. I requested lot land data, part 1, part 2 crime data, and they came back and said, we can't give that to you. We don't have it. And okay, well, what can you give me? We can give you address specific crime. Well, what does that do for me? I know the building has a problem. I want to see what's in the surrounding environment. I want to compare that to census and socioeconomic data and be able to help them understand where they need to put their protective program. So in short, 2021 has been a train wreck. However, it's been extremely beneficial for security consultants such as myself and you in helping organizations now recognize that they need to start thinking about their own security.
Gotcha. And I noticed also that it was a year of, I guess, short attention spans. How we went through cycles of fairly significant events across the US and in many other places. Well, I'm based in Hong Kong. And so we've looked at developments all over the place, but it seems like those developments, now that we're speaking in late January of 22, they seem so distant. And this is what I noticed. School shootings have happened in the States, different types of social unrest, multiple incidents, right? Most recently, a very sad incident in New York where some crazy person shoved a Deloitte employee under, onto the tracks in front of a train. So there's vigils all over New York City. She was employed there. She was, I believe, Asian American. And what worries me about 21 and probably the years past is that our attention spans are getting shorter and shorter. And because of that, I can second what you said, is that we're seeing increase in at least opportunities for committing crimes, because we're all over the place. We don't know what to react to anymore. And if we do react, we forget about it and move on with something else because something else occupies our mind. And so I kind of felt, and I said it to a bunch of friends of mine in my contacts, is that right now, if I look at my family, I can say that we can see with relative comfort what's going to happen in the next 3 months. Okay, we can probably make some projections considering where we live, what kind of lifestyle we have, what's going on with our extended family. Beyond 3 months, I don't know. Yep. And so that's almost like an adjustment that we had to make in order to get used to this, a shorter cycle, I guess, planning, if you will. And so I notice how the same is probably taking place in many businesses where many more things that used to be easier to predict are becoming much more difficult to predict. And so I'm being ever so careful to become a pundit or say, oh, you know what, in 5 years, in 3 years, or in 2 years, you'll have these things happen, right? From geopolitics, I suppose from a larger scale, if you apply some, very deep historic knowledge, maybe some of the things could be visible. But from the perspective of security, it's very challenging right now to make predictions, let's say, into, let's say, a year from now, 2 years, 3 years. Is that the same sense you're having?
I think that before 2021, we still had challenges like workplace violence, espionage, theft, and all those things, right? Those are all, they're still down there. There's still challenges, but now we have other challenges that are in some ways exemplifying those previous challenges, causing social distancing, no tactile connection, no shaking hands or anything like that. It's distancing us. It's creating aminosity in some respects. Animosity, it also is dehumanizing. I mean, when you put a mask on, it's not really a person anymore. It's someone behind a mask. You can't connect with that individual. So there's a number of things that are exemplifying where we're at. I do have feelings that I think we're going to see more intense issues with workplace violence. Workplace violence, I think, is going to be a challenge in the future because of some of these challenges. I think also we're going to see rampant theft in specific areas as a result of some of the elements that were implemented in 2021, 2020, and 2021, such as decriminalization, defunding, and the ripple effects of those things occurring over time. So there's just a lot of things. And because of all of these variables, it's very difficult to say which track is going to occur, right? But I think some of these things that we've always had challenges with are going to be exemplified by some of the decisions that were made in 2020-21.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's a very good point. Actually, you already started our second point is what are we seeing? in terms of, I called it hopes and fears, but challenges and opportunities, or positive or negative developments taking place in 2022. It feels like what you said, those are some of the crises that are waiting to happen. I'm hearing, based on what you said, definitely violence in the workplace, or at least outbursts, not individual, but just that you will see, organization will see difficulty with employees' emotional states. They will demonstrate themselves in different ways. Not everything will end up in somebody beating somebody up, right? But there will be directions where a person will basically become a threat actor inside the organization, just because they're completely taken by their emotions. And so they want to cause harm to the organization. In some cases, like you said, it may spill out into a physical violence, physical altercations against other co-workers and other folks in the organization. So it feels like that's another one of those, I guess, pending crises that I don't know whether everyone is kind of carefully paying attention to that. And it's challenging, in my view, to pay attention to that, because we're kind of saying we're opening up, and then Omicron comes and wait, we're not opening up. Or even with Omicron, some organizations say, okay, we got to get back to work, got to get back to the office. And then all of a sudden the government steps in and said, wait a second, we have a new regulation. So if you don't follow it, you can't open up. And so that presents a new set of challenges. So it's almost like a cat and mouse game type of thing going on. So it's challenging to just say, what is it? Do I have enough visibility to plan my steps, right? And to open my organization, to get people back to the office. And what's not helping also is it seems like there's this issue with the wokeness on in some ways, also an issue with just oversaturation of the media signal, where if someone like Jamie Dimon comes out and says, well, if you don't come back to the office, you can get fired, okay? I understand the frustration at the senior levels, I do. I also feel that choosing words more carefully in this day and age is very necessary. But I also feel like any phrase that somebody will put out there, be it Jamie Dimon or someone else, it seems like in almost all cases, no matter what people say at the senior level, everything gets misinterpreted, and as if like there's a confrontation cooking, okay? So there's a lot of this tension, I feel. Like if people are saying that, if they're thinking that we're going to open up and people are just going to come back like COVID never happened, please, I urge you all to rethink that, because when people come back to the office, let's say in troves, and let's say slightly different physical distancing, more people at the office on any given day, believe you me, there will be it will be a different environment. How do you feel about that, Sean?
I absolutely agree. I think one of the compounding problems we have with workplace violence is this, right? I want it immediately. I want my text immediately. I want my food immediately. I want my date immediately. I want it's everything is immediate. But there are programs like healthcare and what have you where they're not immediate. And you go into a healthcare setting and someone who is being triaged for shortness of breath, has low O2 levels, compared to someone who comes in, I'm not feeling well, and they registered first, but the second person comes in with a higher acuity, he's put in front of it. Well, why does he go first? What about me? Well, it's because I'm this thing, color, or it's because you're discriminating against me, or you don't like me, or whatever. And it's not because of that. It's because there's a system, because this person has a higher risk of becoming more urgent than the individual that's sitting in the waiting room.
Yep.
And the other elements are just people are just not nice anymore. I mean, you talk with people and they are very flippant with the mask, and there's people on the side that don't want to wear a mask, or some people that do want to wear a mask, and no one really wants to see other the person's point of view. we, as I can't speak for the world, but for the United States, I've never seen a time where we have been more alienated. We have threats against the Asian community. We have threats against the Jewish community. We have threats against the African American community. We have threats against the white community. We have there's threats everywhere. Islam, I mean, anything. And that is really concerning for me because we don't have something common. We are all fighting for ourselves, right? It's almost like I kind of want a world war, like back in World War II. We really came together as a community to fight a common problem, right? We don't have those problems per se, and thus really the fragmentation of society, in my opinion, is somewhat eroding. We value human life much less. We would rather videotape someone being pummeled than actually intervene to say, hey, stop that from happening. Assaults, crimes are happening directly in areas where you wouldn't think they would happen. High witness potential. This has always been CPTED, crime prevention. We're seeing these crimes unfold in high witness potential. We've got 17 different fields of view, all being posted onto Twitter, all being posted on, whatever social media platform. Not one person goes to help. And they have a psychological term for it. It's called the bystander effect. Yeah. And it's becoming much more pervasive.
Couldn't agree more. You've said it all, I feel, in this for this particular thing. What else about 2022 you feel will offer some positive turns, and what do you think are some other challenges that we will continue to face?
2022 offers an opportunity. The longer we have the Omicron variant, the longer we have this virus, the more people are working from home. We're getting more productivity out of those individuals. People with security programs that haven't been able to build on foundational policy procedure are using this time to craft and make their programs much more robust. Looking at business continuity planning, emergency preparedness planning so when they come back to the office. I think that's holistically awesome. I think that really is going to benefit us. I am very concerned about emerging threats. I look at from a common sense perspective. We look at autonomous vehicles. We look at autonomous semis. They're talking about drones. Videos 4 years ago that were being used in the Middle East are now playing out in Mexico. Cartels are using drones to bomb each other. And, everybody's like, oh, drones are very difficult to build. And no, they really aren't. You just need a 3D printer, access to the web. The only thing they don't really necessarily have is the explosives, but they've got everything else. There's plans, everything's on thing. Oh, they're very no, they're not really. It's a flight control. You can't buy a flight control. Oh yeah, well yeah, you can buy a flight controller. Yeah, they know. And no one has really considered the controls. We haven't had an event yet. And we're gonna have an event. I mean, it's just a matter of time. We are going to have an event because when you look at the path of an aggressor, the path of the aggressor is one who is determined will take the path of least resistance.
Sure.
There is no less resistance than plugging in a drone that could have distance 20 miles away, fly it out with a cellular, have field video capability on that, arming the drone and or dropping the weapons. Drones are not sophisticated at all. It's a battery, it's an electronic speed controller, it's a motor, it's a GPS circuit, it's a flight controller, and it's a radio. I mean, they're not super complex pieces of equipment. And so because from a common sense perspective, I think we're going to see some, and we're just ill prepared. The FAA, great, you put all these wonderful rules up. It does not stop the threat. There is nothing that is stopping the threat. the genie is out of the bottle. Same with autonomous vehicles. I love the idea. Everything's going to be autonomous. They just tested this semi truck, 80 miles and squad cars, and made sure it didn't run over anybody. Do you remember the Iran Lockheed incident where Iran spoofed the stealth drone to land in Iran? This is military grade equipment, and a foreign country was able to do that. What's to say that someone couldn't take over that network and take control of whatever 80 semis and turn those into what, I mean, again, path of least resistance. Why do I got to go steal the semi? I'll just control it from my computer at home. This is why we see so many cyber vulnerabilities, because of the anonymity. So those are my words of caution for 2022, and hypervigilance around workplace violence, and making sure your programs and getting in front, having the threat assessment teams and what have you.
You know, I want to go back to your the beginning of your comment. You said that a lot of these technologies are being democratized. They're being widely sold to the public. Or if they're not sold to the public, the plans of how to make those technologies, how to assemble them, how to make products work, become widely available. From a technologist's engineering point of view, I understand this is the pinnacle of someone's creation. Why wouldn't you share? You know, and this is when I look at it from an ethical lens, I totally understand the motivation for innovators to share what they create. Totally get it. Okay, this is how to this day people view well-developed countries like the US, Japan, and various others. They built their economies on innovation, on being able to scale up whatever it is that they create that helps solve some problems. Totally respect that. But your point was also about how, because the times are changing, and because of the pandemic, we humans in developed countries or less developed countries, our psyche is changing too, and our motivations, both pure but also the evil motivations, if you will, they're also changing. Okay, in some cases, it might be a person who otherwise would be perfectly fine and operate normally in a society that loses all options of normal lifestyle. And that person may be driven to commit a crime that they otherwise would not have thought about, using the widely available technologies like drones. And very good point about that, because I tell you now, I can go less than 2 kilometers away from where I live. I can drive to a store and buy a drone that is perfectly capable of flying out for an hour, because I can make it dispensable. I don't care if it returns to me, you know.
Right,
so
exactly.
my battery calculations are going to be, it just reached destination. I don't care, right? I could get a very capable drone, large enough that's available, right? And so that technology costs, I don't know, it's like $40 as far as I'm concerned. I don't even have to build nothing. So today it seems like and I've said this before. I return to this thought very often these days, is that we're so good at innovation, but I think sometimes we park the ethical lens, and all we want to demonstrate how proud we are of having created something new and scaled this up and put it into the hands of the public. But at the same time, we're not asking questions about what is the current state of the world, what is the current state of affairs in my country, in my region, in my state, whatever your geography might be, right? And what is going on, and what kind of threat actors are coming forth, and what are their motivations, and what is the MO? And it's the MO that is changing. I can see that. Look at the incident in Mexico. What is it? That 3-4 days ago, the news came out, right? They're already way ahead of the game. That's a criminal organization that used to be literally brute force organization. They used to send like troves of people in a truck to go and assassinate somebody. They don't have to do that no more. What am I supposed to do? You know what I'm saying? So I see this, and yet I can tell you that I'm connected, and I observe I guess the new technologies and a lot of information about how AI is developing, where is it being implemented, how is it being used, and how more physical technologies, not just digital technologies, but physical products are being delivered. They obviously have digital components, but they're in the hands of someone. You could use those products, and how that is becoming more and more connected. Your scenario with commandeering a fleet of trucks, it's not just real. It's something that I'm sure has already been very widely tested by criminals. They just haven't come out with using that at this point. So I worry that it's something that if it doesn't come out in 22, it's imminent for someone to have to have already developed a method of scaling an attack. Okay, and they're using remotely connected tools, we call them, right, for executing on that attack. At the same time, I can see that nation states and other private organizations are testing out scenarios where they're completely isolated, right? They turn off the network environments. They're completely cut off from the outside internet for reasons that they want to understand what would happen if they had to do that. There was a ransomware attack on a hospital in Florida just recently, right? The IT guy had the wherewithal, and I think that it was even in the headline in the news. He said, like, I'd rather piss people off than to have my organization collapse and not be able to deliver medical services in an emergency room, okay? So he went and flipped the switch, right? So I think the switch flipping at a larger scale will also be more widely publicized this year and going forward, because I think organizations are starting to learn that the more connected they are, the more vulnerable they are. And we can have a separate conversation about what's going to happen with the new, I guess, relatively new term, digitalization or cloud adoption. That could be a separate conversation. I'm just planting a seed, man. I'm planting a seed. Okay. So my hopes and fears, you said something that's very important, and I feel like our emotional state doesn't have enough attention. So you and I, I'd like to think that over the years, because of the profession that we're in, we have just by default, we were subject to all sorts of training of how to keep cool in the challenging situations, how to be able to still carry out prudent decisions in challenging situations. But there's that's a minority of people, in my view. And I see this all over. Like, I walk around, all you need to do is just walk out on the street and see how many heads are completely turned down into a phone screen, okay? And people are bumping into each other when they walk on the street. Like, I don't remember 15 years ago or 20 years ago when I arrived in New York that people would bump into each other on the street, just not noticing what the hell's going on around them, right? And so I feel like that dependence, that lack of prudent decision-making, I notice how the pandemic obviously threw a curveball to a number of people, large groups of people who may not benefit, let's say, from being isolated. Isolation is a big deal. And so that kind of, goes back to the previous comment about workplace violence that you made. I think that it's both my hope and fear. I hope that organizations will deploy more resources to understand the general perceptions about people's own I guess emotional states, because you want to know what kind of like a workforce you're getting back to the office. You want to know what kind of concerns, their hopes and fears people have, so that you could be ahead of the game. Because if you miss that opportunity, I feel this year it's going to be far more challenging to have any sort of normalcy, any even remote normalcy for any type of operations. And we're talking about already issues of challenges in the supply chains. We're talking about empty shelves in stores. We're talking about like these massive systems that are being pushed to the brink. So I think this year, my hope is that there will be close attention paid to trying to normalize, like reduce the level of heat on and then pressure on these larger systems and understand people's emotional conditions. The overall fear, I think, is about the level of trust. I think that we can talk about how apply our professional advice to like those whom we charge to protect, our clients. There's a larger issue. The systems and around organizations, or that the organizations are part of, no organization today exists in a complete vacuum. So there are supply chains, there are third-party providers, there's all sorts of interdependencies, right? And I feel like the trust both in network technologies, the trust in capability of even practitioners in our industry, the trust in various types of resources that we have to be subject to, be it, I don't know, just simple delivery of food to a workplace, right? If you run a large office, right, and you rely on consistency of food deliveries, right? Restocking your, a soft drink machine or something like that, right? Trivial things, but there are things that your business would not be able to operate without, that may also be affected. And I feel like the general trust in people behind those decisions and behind those systems, and government that provides certain resources and the regulatory framework, that is taking a big hit across the world. People are very concerned about what's going on with the media stream. However, we might be dependent on it, but I feel like you don't know what's true anymore when news are being shared, and very few channels of accurate information, fact-checked information exist. But even if they do, they're not very widely used. They might be used in some circles, but certainly don't have as wide a circulation as I would hope. So I feel that's the fear I would apply to this year. If we don't fix the issues of trust in systems and structures and in governments and various other resources that we need to sustain our lifestyles, the question of protection, I don't know how pertinent it will be. It will have to scale up to almost like a government level. So yeah, I don't know if I hope I articulated it well. So we'll see what the reaction will be.
I touch on just a couple points. One, you look at the cartels and why are they doing it? Just like what I described. It's common sense. It's just path of least resistance. I'm not going to lose anybody. It's all about, basically command support. I can do this cheaper, more effective, and I'm not going to have any losses, and it's going to be more beneficial for me. Same thing from an attack vector. from a workplace violence perspective, especially now because of that disconnect and people working remotely and what have you, I think we need to now more than ever spend as much time in termination as we do hire. We
Understood.
are so easy to discard someone when we don't want them. But we spend so much time onboarding and bringing someone in, making sure they're the right fit and culture for the organization. 12, 10, 11 interviews, all this stuff, and right guy and everything like that, or right girl or whoever. But when we, make the decision to terminate, we have people that will do it on a Zoom call. We have people that will fire all sorts of people openly in front of everybody. And the connectivity issues, I really believe it's extremely important. I actually wrote a guide on this, that we have to spend more time terminating as we spend the same amount of time in hiring as we do termination. We have to be respectful of people's dignity and their concerns, and as an organization support them.
And yet, just literally, it's just serendipitous that, to your point, I was reading something where both recruiters and organizations, like the hiring managers within organizations, continue to sound alarms about the challenges of bringing people on board. I'm not diminishing what you just said. I'm just saying it's very much connected, because now you're stretching people's bandwidths even more thinly. Yep. You have to take care of, like, everybody has to multitask now. You have to work out a decent enough and a humane and a good plan for how you will reduce staff in your organizations. And at the same time, everybody, is under pressure to bring more talent to organizations. And there's a lot to be said about how the prospective employees view the quality of their life at work. Because I read something recently where they said that, yeah, a lot of jobs are available, but they're all crappy. I don't want to go shovel coal or go work flipping burgers, right? So there's a lot to be said about the nuance of the volume of open positions versus the interest in those positions, and why those positions remain unfilled. And at the same time, to return to your comment earlier, I don't think we've ever paid enough attention, if you ask me, to how you release people from your organization. How do you do that with dignity to ensure that the feeling about the loss of the job does not reverberate for years against the organization, where a person is incentivized to cause the organization harm as they exit. And again, pair it with the challenges of just different psychological states, emotional states across populations that again, because of isolation, because of the different environments, and the feeling of, I guess, the pandemic weight, not being able to see your loved ones and things like that. I think that all of those things combined create a much more volatile environment. And with that, I wanted to ask you, we've covered quite a few items. Seems like a few more fears and a few hopes. What would you say to young and aspiring practitioners today? Like, we have an industry that, whether people recognize it or not, but it is intimately interconnected with the stability of systems, both organizations, governments, and just the normal order of the world, right, of society. I don't know if people understand it that way, but that's how I see what we do, how it contributes to the value it contributes. So what would you say to young and aspiring practitioners for 2022 and beyond, those who are looking to build their brands in our industry, those who are looking to, I guess, be the competent and wise advisors to those whom they're charged to protect?
So the first item is, I'm going to describe what my late father said. A job worth doing is a job worth doing right. So any job you do it to the best of your ability, always. Second, never stop learning. Read, watch videos, podcasts, but you want to constantly be learning. You want to constantly look at different perceptions to shape your protective values for your organization. 3, don't settle. If you're not in the right organization, if you think you can do more, if you don't feel that you've been rewarded properly or whatever, seek new opportunities. Don't stay with the same organization that is going to continue to not welcome your ideas. And last but not least, carpe diem, seize the day.
Thank you. I'll add to this already a very, very good list, a few things. One is the value of nuance, because to your point about this continual learning mantra, I feel like you also have to be a very good assessor of what is it that you're learning, what kind of content you're receiving. Just a simple example, I was at a conference, and I've mentioned this example before, where somebody said 70% of organizations have deployed business continuity plans. I said, okay, did you evaluate the quality and usefulness of those business continuity plans, in addition to saying, using this wide number? And they said, no, we never went into those details. Why? Isn't it, a good achievement by itself that 70% of organizations have business continuity plans? And I had to stop and say, I'm sorry, but it still, I don't understand your point. It's good that those organizations claim to have business continuity plans, but what if they suck? What if every one of those plans, I could take a look at it and it doesn't work? Right? Isn't that a false sense of whatever controls you have in place, or about the value of those controls? And so, in our practice, it's very important to pay attention to details. Somebody asked me, they said, what kind of temperature screening equipment should I install at my facility? And they said, we're going with this company, and they already have a ready-made unit, right? It's on a pedestal, it's mounted, just delivered, plug and play, and it's going to start measuring people's temperature levels as they walk through the lobby. And so, okay, well, did you look at the company that's selling it to you? Turned out that the company is literally relabeling a product that costs like a quarter or a fifth of the price, made in China, that's already been discredited, but it looks shiny and new. And look, we're charging several $1,000s to deliver it to you, right? And so the nuance in many cases, I feel it's very important to add as you build your competence and credibility. And another thing that stands out, continues to stand out to me, is because by virtue of what we do, we are natural skeptics, right? We have to take a look at what's presented to us, break it apart a little bit, look under the hood, if you will, and again, that with attention to detail, and then kind of go back to the client and say, well, you were placing trust in these controls, but they don't actually work the way you wanted. So here is some advice for you to fix that and make all of this work exactly as you expect. In order to in order to do this, right, I think everything rests on the quality of the message and the quality of your interaction with the decision makers, those that are receiving your product, your advice. And it feels like not many, if any, organizations in our industry deliver this type of training, this type of skill to those young and aspiring practitioners who will be, or today, stand in front of senior decision makers. You got to be able to sell your advice, right? Because just the same way as you're lifting the hood and you're looking under their, into their controls, they're assessing you. They're looking at your behavior, your verbal, nonverbal communication, how you justify what it is that you've uncovered and the solutions that you're recommending. And I feel like this ability to deliver a cohesive message, be it in written form or in a briefing, I think that is something that will take a practitioner a long way and will help them grow and be respected and also be called back when opportunities arise for their service. So those are the couple of things I wanted to add. Any closing comments?
I think you're spot on with the presentation. I will tell you, from my career advanced specifically because, I was doing things like Toast and, learning how to speak and how to convey ideas and what have you. I mean, you can sell anything, but you need to be able to articulate that in a very meaningful and powerful and impactful way. And it's the gateway to other opportunities, because you get in front of an executive or like you're going to be presenting, once it happens, you'll start doing presentations all the time. And that's where you really enhance your brand and you start putting out information and leadership to the community. That is really very powerful. Very good point. Very good point.
Thank you. With that, let's make this a tradition. I will try to put a note and remind myself that, first of all, we should do this more often because I always appreciate how you think. I appreciate that there's no lecture. I like that you're looking at what's happening, you're assessing it, you're delivering your thoughts based on your experience, based on what you've been observing over the years. I like that you're not scared to, I guess, offer some words of caution to both us as practitioners, but also to a wider community, potentially the client community that we're all supporting. And I think this idea of let's say doing a similar exercise, let's say a few years during this year, but particularly as we end each year would be, that's very appealing to me. First of all, because I like learning from you. I like spending time in conversation with you, but also because I feel like you, as busy as you are, you should really consider a teaching role somewhere, not just in a short meeting or in a seminar. But I feel like there's a greater opportunity for you to particularly enable this young and aspiring community of practitioners who I think are still to this day seeking for the right pathway into our industry. So planting a seed with you, my friend. Hopefully that will come up as an opportunity for you.
I would welcome that. I would welcome that. I enjoy our conversations as well because they're conversations. There's no agenda. There's nothing. We're just talking like two people, and hopefully people are listening to this and saying, hey, that makes sense. Yeah, I never thought of it that way, and the hope is, that we make people stronger and better out of these conversations. So anytime, always welcome to get on a call with you.
Thank you so much. Please stay safe. And on that note, I wish everyone a happy new year, and please look after yourself, stay safe, and we'll connect very soon.
Sounds good. Happy New Year.